Texans traded for Minnesota Vikings guard Ed Ingram, who started for 2.5 seasons on and off for the Vikings. He was benched last season. So this Texans rebuild that we knew that the Texans were going to tear the offensive line down to the studs. Goodbye to Laramie Tunsil. Goodbye to Shaq Mason. Goodbye to Kenyon Green. And I'm going to bring up Kenyon Green's name a few times today because in some ways I think they might have swapped out their right guard, their left guard, Kenyon Green, for a right guard in Ed Ingram, who's maybe a better version of Kenyon Green, but not necessarily the dream candidate. He's a guy that's shown some promise, needs to make improvements. This teardown feels a little bit like the rebuild is in the FEMA stages right now. It feels like we're in a FEMA trailer. I'm still waiting. Maybe I missed a move like I did yesterday when they signed Ed Ingram during my live stream. But I want to take a look at Ed Ingram. There's some things to really like about Ed Ingram in terms of the upside. Same way with Kenyon Green. There's flashes where you can see good stuff on tape. He's been impressive at times in the run game. Pass protection is very much a work in progress. So let's take a look at Ed Ingram. I'm going to show you the good stuff first. I'm going to try like hell not to call him Evan Ingram, even though I've done that 3 times today already. Then I'll show you some of the areas of improvement. And what you hope is that with a new offensive coordinator and a new setting and with a new offensive line coach that maybe Ed Ingram as well as some of these other guys on the offensive line can thrive. But we'll go. He's the right guard. I gave circles to you guys today after I neglected it yesterday. Right guard for the Vikings. These are the good run plays. You're going to see he does a really good job at times of taking guys to the ground. He shows a toughness and a grittiness. Oh, crap. Wrong one. Damn it. The circles aren't on this one. I'm going to be the circles here just a second. Bad way to start off, Sethers. Bad way to start off. I have to live up to Steve from yesterday. I have to overcome everything that he criticized me for. So what I want to talk about at the end is kind of whether you can hint at any kind of a scheme change or anything because of the guys they've signed so far in Laken Tomlinson and Ed Ingram, not Evan Ingram, Ed Ingram. Because I've seen a couple of people read into their backgrounds, and I think that's a little bit ahead of the curve for what we've seen out of Cole Potter, or what we might see out of Nick Calley as the offensive coordinator. Here we go. All right, you see that circle? Okay. So we saw this play already. Takes him to the ground. This is all from the Texans game. The ability that he has to work up to linebackers, working in combo blocks. He shows a lot of physicality. He only weighs about 305 pounds, but he'll take guys to the ground quite a bit in the run game. He's not as consistent as you want him to be, but that's where, on this reach block here, I think he shows some promise. The fact that he's been durable physically is a big improvement over Kenyon Green. Got Foley Fatukasi on that one. And boy, taking him right up into the linebacker's lap. That's what you like to see. And he's talked about it. I heard him criticize himself as a guy that is good in the run game, but doesn't always stick on blocks. There's a few of those here we're going to watch. This one, I feel bad about putting it in because when I rewatched it, he doesn't stay attached on that block. Part of that's because the offensive tackle came off. But he'll work up to linebackers really well. We'll get that in a little bit. You see him out in space, whiffing at times. And this is something that sometimes he's good at it, but there's other times in space like Henry Toa and Azeez Elshire there in both those instances got past him. Not a perfect prospect. That's why you're able to get him for a 6th-round pick. The working up the backers, which I had promised you, this part, there's some promise here. Because one thing we saw with the Texans is that the coordination between the guards and the tackles on combo blocks working up the backers wasn't always as good as you'd like it to be. So watch here. He gets a piece of the tag. Oh, this is pass protection. Okay, pass protection. These aren't bad plays, but even on his good plays, you can see it's a little bit like he's trying to ride a wild bronco at times. He gets the jobs done by staying active with his hands, and he'll fight. He'll reset his feet when he's off balance. He'll scan like that. But he doesn't look as strong and as stable. That's where you worry maybe sometimes about the 305 pounds. Tim Settle, put up a good fight on that one, but it was a good rep. It was a good rep for Ingram. Tim Settle shows up here in a little bit. Here's working up to the linebackers. Right guard gets up on Toa. nothing, too elegant there. This one is really nice of a combo working up to the backer, gets a hat on Aziz Alshire. This next one, a couple of big whumps on that one. Like, he's got that pop in his hips at times. So there's something to work with here. He's got a lot of work to do. I'm showing you selectively some of the good plays. Gets Henry Toa on skates on that play. And there was, the Vikings offensive line. The Vikings are having a little bit of the season, the offseason that I wish the Texans were having. They've signed a couple of Colts offensive linemen, or traded for and signed Colts offensive linemen. They've gotten 2 really good defensive tackles. But I'm not jealous. They weakened the Colts. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Okay, that was a bad snap. If you saw Will Anderson doing Will Anderson things here, he gets his feet tangled up, but as Vikings fans will tell you, he tends to get his feet tangled up way more than you'd like, sometimes with the quarterback himself. He sacked Kirk Cousins once. It was an impressive sack a couple years ago. Tim Settle has himself a good rep on this one. And you're going to see that there's times where Ingram gets his legs kind of straightened out. His left leg straightens out there. Tim Settle gets him for the sack. This one, I believe he does a good job picking up Jalen Petrie, who's blitzing, has a good first swipe at him, but then he just doesn't keep up with it, and Jalen Petrie gets in on the tackle. This one I don't remember. What happens on this one? Oh, yeah, it was a good play by the Vikings, but, if you guys watched yesterday, I talked about there's times where Booker, the rookie, the draft prospect out of Alabama, will do things in college that's going to get him in trouble in the NFL because Booker leans out a little too far sometimes. This isn't a problem. He's not leaning out too far this time. It's just that when Booker tries to do it against guys like Danielle Hunter who are coming inside, it doesn't go as well as when you're going against a 245-pounder from Vanderbilt. So the big thing that I alluded to, which was the fact that both Lake and Tomlinson, who spent a lot of time in San Francisco, and now Ingram comes from Minnesota with Kevin O'Connell. So both those guys obviously in the Shanahan-McVay tree, one being Shanahan himself, the other being McVay. I wouldn't read too much into that just because Calley comes from the Rams, where they're not an outside zone-based scheme anymore. They mix and match a lot, and they're just as likely to do power and duo and zone and gap concept stuff as they are doing outside zone. Likewise, in Minnesota, Kevin O'Connell is not strictly an outside zone-based guy, but I could see where Nick Calley wants to have that tool in his toolkit. And both these guys have experience with offensive coordinators who want to be good at the outside zone run. He's 305 pounds, so he's not, even though he's nasty and gritty and tough in the run game, he's not going to be a classic 345-pound guy that just leans on people. Let's see. Hopefully the good overshadows the bad, but it beats every play being blown, making CJ have to run. Future Texans left. Oh, Jeff Okudah. Is Jeff Okudah back? See, I missed an Okudah signing? Or no, is Jeff Okudah still in the... Okay, there's a whole Jeff Okudah conversation going on. So that's him. I'm going to do Lake and Tomlinson. I really want to get to Lake and Tomlinson because I've only watched him briefly. I'll try to find some good tape of him. I like just going through one game and getting a feel. And the one thing I'd say about Ed Ingram, is that in a couple interviews that I read or saw of him, he does own the weaknesses he had last year. I don't think we've got a guy that feels like he got screwed over by Minnesota or anything. Kenyon Green, I wish the best for him in Philadelphia. I think Philadelphia has a justified reason to think that maybe they're a little bit like the Astros are with their pitching coaching staff, that if there's a Charlie Morton somewhere there in Kenyon Green, then Jeff Stoutland, the offensive line coach, might be able to get it out of him. So please like, subscribe, everything else, and look for my Lake and Tomlinson sometime this weekend.